Yo, what is up, and welcome to what I watched this month for the month of June 2020. A couple of big movies in this month, so there's some good stuff to look forward to, but there's also a lot more shit this month than I think in any other month to date. So yeah, let's begin. So I started with the DCOM holes. I dodged this as a kid, and I wasn't going into this with very high expectations or any nostalgia. There's kind of just not a whole, get it, lot here that grabbed me. Obviously there's Shia LaBeouf, but other than that, it just feels like an average DCOM with not a whole lot of substance to it. It's probably better with nostalgia value, but there really isn't enough that this movie does to really set itself apart from anything else. 3 out of 5. And then I watched Tomboy, which is another Celine Sciamma, and again, she just does really well with this. She really does a lot to make emotion feel dense, and just captures a lot of things in such an interesting way. It's definitely worth checking if you're Judith Butlerhead to gender troubles in this bitch. 4 out of 5. Considering the rest of his filmography, it feels weird that Baumbach has made a movie about a mid-20s female that's a struggling artist in New York. But at the same time, when you're watching the movie, it makes a lot of sense. Greta Gerwig is sick in this, and the visual style kind of doesn't add a whole lot to the film, except for making it look nice and stylized. And yeah, it's pretty relatable and bleak, but it still has its fun and humorous moments. But yeah, I really like this and think it's really effective in what it wants to do. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Edward Scissorhands, and I'd also somehow dodged this as a kid for the most part. Either that, or I just did watch this as a kid, but just did not give a shit about it at all. And I don't give a shit about it at all now. The visuals were unsurprisingly my favourite part about the film. It was the only thing I really enjoyed, apart from Johnny Depp looking funny, just because of how sad and dumb and glistening he looks. Like, he looks like an e-boy, which is crazy. It's like proto-Timothy. It's kind of good, but it's hard carried by the visuals. 3 out of 5. And then I watched Thirst, and this is definitely one of the most interesting vampire movies I've ever seen. You would definitely say that this is saying a lot about sexual desire, which I think is pretty standard for vampire movies, but I'd say Park Chan-wook has approached it fairly differently, because there's this whole church bit, and, you know, in the church you have to swear to abstinence and stuff like that. And Song Kang-ho is sick as per usual, but I do think that this is Park Chan-wook's weakest film. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, and this just completely blew me away. Poul Schrader and the cast and the production team and everyone just knocks this out of the park. It's a crazy narrative with some crazy performances and some of the most inventive and visually stunning set design and cinematography to go alongside it. And as far as I'm aware, this is an absolute must-watch. Yukio Mishima is crazy. Poul Schrader and this film certainly matched it. 5 out of 5. And then I watched But I'm a Cheerleader, and this is kind of like Election, but not as good. But instead of being about an election, it's about gay conversion therapy. It's got Julie Delpy in it and has Zuko from Avatar, which is crazy and funny. But yeah, again, had a good time with this, and it would probably be better if you were gay and just had like an unsupporting family and stuff. But yeah, it's good as a satire piece, and probably one of the centerpieces of queer cinema. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Eating Raoul, and half of the people in the Criterion Closet videos talk like this, like it's the second coming. But holy shit, is it not that good. It's kind of funny and probably better in the 80s, and maybe it was like one of the first real low budget passion comedies. Maybe it was like one of the first real low budget passion project comedies that really existed. But yeah, it really didn't do much for me. It has a couple of laughs and the premise is interesting, but certainly doesn't live up to my expectations. Nor did it really excite me at all. And cannibalism has so much potential, but it's just wasted here. 3 out of 5. This could have been Hannibal shit. Like funny Hannibal, but it wasn't. Then I watched Flushed Away. And I'd seen this at the cinemas as a kid and not really remembered much about it, but I think that's not really my fault, as I feel like a lot of this is extremely unremarkable, apart from like the general narrative of a rat getting flushed down the toilet, because that's like interesting for a kids movie at least. I really did not have a good time with this at all. The fat rat that watches the soccer is mad and based, but I don't know how he's based, don't quote me with that. Hugh Jackman sounds dumb, and Kate Winslet is like secretly hot in it, and John Reno being in it is really mad, but yeah, didn't enjoy this much at all. 2 out of 5, can't believe I just outed myself as Kate Winslet fucking flushed away furry. And then I watched Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl, which I also dodged as a kid, except for watching like the first 20 minutes in the hall at Rosebud Secondary College in year 7 on like a rainy Friday at lunchtime. And yeah, I really didn't care about it. Johnny Depp's kind of cool, but maybe it was the Kingdom Hearts effect of having an annoying world in like every single game. But I don't see how Disney was able to turn this into a franchise, and much less be able to maintain it for so long. Not very good in my opinion. 2.5 out of 5. And then I watched The Shawshank Redemption, and I'm going to break a lot of hearts here, but this is not the best movie of all time. Sorry IMDb, but you are fucking wrong. Sure, the narrative is pretty great, it's very above average and it's pretty good, but the lead performances are also good. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, good as. But there certainly isn't a lot here that makes it special apart from that. A lot of it feels so incredibly cookie cutter, and like there was no real vision to it other than filming the script. But maybe that's because so much of what came out afterward was replicating it, but I feel like there's no absolutely mental shots or production design, and so much of this could just blend together with Frank Darabont's other Stephen King adaptation in The Green Mile. Like, narratively it's special, but I don't think it's very special apart from that. But still good, 4 out of 5. And then I watched First Reformed, and Paul Schrader killed it again. This is probably one of the most potent and important films of the last 5 years, and it's so sad that it's been almost completely overlooked. Ethan Hawke is so good in this. And yeah, this is like the movie that everyone should watch right now, as it explores so much of where we're going with climate change and human inaction, and how it feels to be left behind. Based as fuck movie. And like exactly my university course, which makes it even better and worse at the same time, because I'm just like, I'm gonna be Ethan Hawke in this in like 2 months. 4.5 out of 5. And then I watched The Watermelon Woman, and this is the sickest outfits, and Cheryl Denier's style is super interesting. Somewhat of a typical 90s indie movie a la Clerks and shit, but it also has this interesting film history and theory lens to it, which is what Dunier's character is doing throughout the film. Probably another centerpiece of queer cinema, especially in the 90s, but also cool to see a movie directed by a black female, especially a queer one, because sadly that doesn't happen very often, but they've got style. 4 out of 5. And then I watched House, and this is so crazy, and it's so funny, and this is just like the archetypal so bad it's good, but it isn't bad. It just has this tonal dissonance throughout, and it has paired Japanese high school girls with this haunted house, and it's just so dumb and so funny, and almost nothing about it makes sense. It's almost unlike anything I'd seen beforehand, and I can certainly see why it's so revered. And it's just because it hits, and it's so enjoyable. It's definitely like trippy as bro, but it's also so clearly defined, which is weird considering there have been 1 million Western movies like this, but none of them have even come close to what Obayashi achieved. 5 out of 5. Then I watched Yi Yi, and Edward Yang is just so fucking good. It's a bit more moody than A Brighter Summer Day, It's a fair bit shorter, and it surrounds this family who partake in a wedding at the beginning of the film and a funeral at the end of it, and that's just as the title suggests, as in Taiwanese. It's a 1 and a 2, which clearly represents how life goes on, and there's kind of like this dance between life and death, and that's kind of what the movie plays with. It's poetic, and it's just a dance. It ebbs and flows from happiness to sadness and everything in between. And yeah, it's just so good at what it does, and it's at times heartbreaking to see the lives of the family go by, and how much the father's life is reflected in the lives of his children. It's just such an insane movie, and it's so sad that it was Edward Liang's last, because it feels like there's so much more he could have done, but that only adds to the poetics of the film. Plus, it has a sick Taiwanese Phantom Menace poster, and the main boy with his camera, he does cool shit. 5 out of 5. And then I watched Tampopo, and this is another movie that's in a similar style to House, because it just takes itself with such little seriousness, but at the same time, Itami is riffing off spaghetti westerns and makes such a sexual and tantalizing movie. There's a lot here about food and sex, as well as food and sex. And while that leads to a lot of funny moments, a lot of the moments in this are really weird and disarming. But this is also a super fun movie that also has a lot of depth to it. And it's just like carnal desires mixed with just spaghetti western, mixed with heartwarming moments. And it just goes fucking everywhere. Juzo Itami's a madman. 4.5 out of 5. Then I watched The Handmaiden, and Park Chan-wook knocks it out of the park with this. It's so typically one of these movies with the twist-filled narrative and themes of vengeance, but this time dealing with the themes of Orientalism and fetishism as well as that. And this just looks so fucking incredible. The costuming as well as the mansion in the film just looks so fucking good. It just takes you for a ride, and it's really exciting and engaging. And it's really nice to look at and has lots of twists and turns. 4.5 out of 5. Then I watched Bo Burnham's Make Happy, and this is one of the only Netflix comedy specials I've ever seen, and it's the best. It's like if internet humour was actually good. 4.5 out of 5. Then I watched The Farewell, and this is a nice movie about family that can be sad and also happy. Kind of like Yi, but with Awkwafina in it, and not as good. But I really enjoyed watching this, and it was visually pretty nice, with at least one shot that looks absolutely crazy cool. And yeah, there's also this like subtext about American culture and culture clashing and that kind of stuff, and it's a nice movie. 4 out of 5. Super Mario Bros. Movie. I cannot believe that this movie exists as it does. It's like such a weird Blade Runner Mad Max fusion. And it just makes absolutely no sense considering it's a Mario movie. It's like, it doesn't make sense why it's aesthetically like it is. Dennis Hopper in it is funny. Not only because it's Dennis Hopper as King Bowser, but like there's the part where the camera cuts to a monkey and he just yells out monkey. Monkey. And it's just so fucking funny because this movie is so dumb and it's almost devoid of anything that makes it Mario. And that makes it better, but I don't know, it's so strange and weird, and the worst part is that it isn't that bad. 3 out of 5. And then I followed that up with The Five Bloods in the same sitting. Crazy. And I really enjoyed this at the time of watching it, but in retrospect it probably didn't hit the highs I thought it did. Highlights are definitely Delroy Lindo's performance, as everyone knows, and the crazy shit that happens as is expected in a Spike Lee film at this point, as well as the tonal shifts without dissonance, also Spike Lee, but also has Jean Reno in a MAGA hat, and it's funny and sad because he's fat and old, but he's wearing a MAGA hat, so it's funny. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Life of Brian, and I wasn't a huge fan and can't remember very much, and I was very tired, and I was like in the process of moving house, and it should have been more funny than what it was, but I can expect it, and there definitely wasn't any of my fault in that. It was the movie's fault. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Before Midnight, and it just felt so sad to end the trilogy, and I felt sad and stressed out for a lot of this, even though at the start there's like this hour where it's just all nice and comfy because it's like the other movies, and then they start fighting and they're angry and they're yelling, and it's just like you don't want to see them fight after all this time, and you just want them to be happy, and you just kind of get scared because they're fighting, and you get sad because their entire relationship is crumbling in front of the camera, and it feels incredibly perverse that you're even in this position. It's just sad and gross and perverted, but at the same time it is so good. It's very similar to the rest of the trilogy, where it just feels like, how did they do this and how do they make it so authentic? And Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are just so good, but it's just like, it's sad. 5 out of 5. And then I watched Chungking Express. This is my first Kar-wai, and I was not disappointed. It certainly had a style to it, and it certainly has mopiness and pineapples. It's just really good and just has the vibe that just hits me, and the restaurant and Chungking Mansion and just aesthetics of it all. So good. And immediately after I watched this, I just couldn't leave my mind, and I was always thinking about it, even though it didn't grab me as much as it could when I watched it. 4.5 out of 5 at the time. Foreshadowing for July's video. Then I watched Three Colors Blue, and this again has a sad mopey vibe, but this time it's French, so it's more socially acceptable. But yeah, Kieslowski really just fucked on everything making this film, and everything comes together to make something really great and really good and really beautiful. And yeah, 4.5 out of 5. And then I watched the black and white cut of Parasite, and it's just so crazy that the black and white cut just feels natural. I forgot that there were even colours in this movie when I was watching it, because it just felt like, yeah, this is how it always was. But other than that, it's Parasite, so it's incredible. 5 out of 5, but in black and white. Then I watched Three Colors White, and it was interesting that this was set in Poland mostly, because the only thing I knew about the Three Colors trilogy was that it's a French flag, and so I was just expecting it to be very French. But then I found out Kieslowski was Polish, and then this movie was in Poland, and so things kind of made sense. But unfortunately there's not a whole lot of white in this, except for the people. In Blue there was so much blue, but there's just not a whole lot of white in this, other than like white walls, which don't count. And while it's not as potent as Blue, I still think that white has a lot to say about immigration, marriage, purity, but it doesn't get that point quite across as well as Blue. 4 out of 5. And then I watched Killing Them Softly, and I remember seeing a review of this on like the Today Show in whatever year it came out, and thinking, oh, that looks kind of cool, because I was like 11. But it's shit, and really boring and disappointing and shit. 2.5 out of 5. Then I watched Tokyo Godfathers and Satoshi Kon. 4.5 out of 5. And then I binge watched all of Paranoia Agent in one day. I think that was the same day I watched Tokyo Godfathers. And yeah, fucking hell, 4.5 out of 5. Then I watched some Pixar shorts, and Tintoy, disgusting, made me want to throw up. Like, gross. Then I watched Knick Knack, and it's sick, and the bikini girls are hot, and I'm sick of pretending they're not. Geri's Game is obviously mad. Luxo Jr. is Pogaz. Then I watched Three Colors Red, and this is maybe the best of the trilogy, purely because of the dog and the ending scene where everyone comes together and it's proper mad. And yeah, I neglected to mention this before, but throughout the trilogy there are cameos by the central characters in each if you look hard enough. I neglected to mention this before, but throughout the trilogy there are cameos by the central characters in each if you look hard enough, but this one revolves around a girl who runs into an old guy who has a wiretap to all of his neighbours' phones, so that he knows all of the neighbourhood goss, and he's also an ex-judge. And yeah, that's funny. And yeah, that's a gross underrepresentation of what this movie actually is, but whatever. 4.5 out of 5. Just watch it instead of listening to me talk about it. Then I watched Over the Garden Wall, and this is really strange and really dark for a Cartoon Network miniseries, but it's also really great. It's got a lot of creepy and unsettling things about it, and it's not only visually but also thematically. And then at the same time, it's also pretty comfy, and it's a nice and pleasant time, but also kind of really dark. Yeah. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Sorry to Bother You, and Armie Hammer saying horsecock and David Cross's voice coming from Lakeith's mouth is funny. 3.5 out of 5. And then I watched Artemis Fowl, and I really don't want to talk about this. This is... yeah. Yeah, I regret watching this. Just 0.5 stars out of 5. Piece of shit. Don't know how Kenneth Branagh is allowed to make movies. I watched Alien, and it's probably not the best thing to watch in the middle of the day, but just didn't have the effect it could have had on me if I watched it at night, or in a better atmosphere even. 3.5 out of 5, but I'm sure that could go up. I am not deflecting here. Then I watched Eric Andre Legalise Everything, and this is shit. Imagine just thinking that loud equals funny if you're in front of an audience of adults that are laughing at you because you are being loud. Seriously guys, grow up. Very disappointing considering the highs of the Eric Andre show. 2 out of 5. Then I watched Honey Boy, and it's pretty sad as a movie and a look at Shy's life into how parents can treat their children, especially when their children are making money. Shy also kills it acting as his dad, which certainly would have been a weird and profound experience for him, and that's exactly what this movie reads as. It's this act of forgiveness through this weird lens of having to act out the dad, rather than looking solely at himself during the childhood. It's weird, but it's good. It's weird on a deeper level, but like, it's pretty standard, but it's got interesting things. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Breathless, and I can see why people could love this so much, but why would you choose to? There's so much better stuff to like. Come at me, nerds. 3.5 out of 5. And then I watched Mistress America, and I'm not sure if I genuinely liked this or if I just have a crush on Greta Gerwig, and I think it's the latter. 4 out of 5. And then I watched Isle of Dogs, and the Mistress America assertion also applies to this, and it also applies to Frances Ha. But at the same time, this is proper mad, and dogs are cool as, and they are way better than cats. And yeah, it's funny to see this after watching Seven Samurai and having a bit more knowledge of samurai movies, which Wes Anderson obviously took a lot of inspiration from for this. And yeah, fun time with super cool aesthetics, and the stop motion is cool as. 4 out of 5. Then I watched The Pianist. Fuck Roman Polanski. 4 out of 5. Nothing more. National Treasure 1. Not even secretly mad. This is the best Indiana Jones movie. Don't at me. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Lola, and I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to watching more Jacques Demy in the future, and to see how he evolves in cements his style. But yeah, pretty cool. Just as a romance movie, there's a bit more depth to it in 60s France, so it's cool, and cooler than Breathless, no offense. 4 out of 5. And then I watched Ratcatcher, and this is just disgusting and gross. But it's very like, why did Thatcher even have a platform? Just her neoliberalism ruined everything. But yeah, it's sad and gross, and Scottish poverty that's just yuck, and kids without a place in the world. It's like Florida Project. I think I wrote this before I watched Gummo and Kids, but this is like Gummo and Kids but Scottish. And yeah, it's just, yeah, how do people live like this and likely still do kids' version of Train Spotting? Yeah. Fuck Margaret Thatcher in chat. 4 out of 5. High School Musical. I actually just like quivered in fear as I read that. It's 2 out of 5. Then I watched Hotel Chevalier and the Darjeeling Limited, and Hotel Chevalier continues to be one of the best things I've seen in every possible way. And it's not just because of naked Natalie Portman, I swear to God. But Darjeeling Limited just feels like one of Wes Anderson's less accomplished works. It feels a bit Goddardy. Sure. I'll die on that hill apparently. I think he said it in India because of Satyajit Ray, which is true because I've read it in that book. And it certainly has its moments, but not enough Bill Murray, which is sad, and having Natalie Portman being an only one shot sucks. And yeah, the three brothers kind of do it for me, but they also kind of not, and that's kind of like the whole movie. 5 out of 5 for Hotel Chevalier, and 3.5 out of 5 for Darjeeling Limited. Then I watched BPM. It's really good for the first long while of it, and Hadel Hanel is cool, but towards the end it really just falls apart, which was sad. But yeah, nice movie looking at French people with AIDS in like the 1990s. 3.5 out of 5. And then I watched the version Suicides, and I remember really enjoying this and nearly absolutely pissing myself with the one shot of James Woods on the stairs with his arms behind his back. Because it looked so fucking funny because you just can't see his arms at all, and so it just looks like his weird torso with legs, and it's funny. 4 out of 5. Okay, then I watched a whole bunch of shitty Marvel movies. I think it was Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, Thor 1 and Thor 2. And they're all really bad, but I'm withholding that comment actually. Yeah, they're all shit. I'm not even going to score them. You can look at my score on Letterboxd. At Big Bigs. I think. Then I watched the Meyerowitz stories, New and Selected. And yeah, it's another Blomback, and it's mostly the same things as his previous work, but this time it has Adam Sandler in it. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Barton Fink, and John Goodman's a Nazi in it, and there's a mosquito in it, and it's pretty cool, but not the best Coen Brothers movie, but it's cool as like a timepiece, and it looks nice. 4 out of 5. Then I watched Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, and this is so surprisingly good. It just takes the piss out of musician biopics, and it just works so well, and it's funny along the way, and the songs are surprisingly sick and funny, and yeah, this is really good, and it has heaps of cool celebrity cameos, and it has no right to be as good as it is. Give it a 3.5 out of 5 for now, but I will reserve the right to change it to a 4. And then I watched the 2018 version of Suspiria, and it's got Tilda Swinton playing 3 different roles, even though I didn't realise right until the end, and it made me want to cry because it was so gross that Tilda Swinton played 3 different roles in the way she did. And then Tom York's scores are really cool, and Guadagnino just ties it all together to make this really cool, and while it's not as visually interesting as the original, I feel like everything about this just works so much better and is just so much more realised than the original. 4.5 out of 5. Phineas and Ferb's Star Wars is so shit. I was expecting to be in line with the Family Guy Star Wars things with Phineas and Ferb's characters taking the mantle of Luke and stuff, but it's just a Phineas and Ferb episode taking place in the periphery of A New Hope. and it just doesn't make sense and makes it really annoying because you want to know what's happening in Star Wars, but you're just stuck with Phineas and Ferb. You're like, who gives a shit? But Ferb does turn into Darth Maul for some reason and nearly murks everyone, which is cool, but it's the only good part out of any of it. 1.5 out of 5. Then I watched Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, hashtag not my Roderick, also really bad and really annoying and completely irredeemable, and you can kind of watch it as like really bad with friends, but just don't watch it by yourself. 1.5 out of 5. Then watched Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and this is probably the most mainline Harry Potter movie, which sucks because it should be so sick. And Snape should be so sick in it, but because of market trends at the time, it was like they needed to make this an exclusive love story based movie and focus on the shitty romantic subplots that the book has instead of making Harry make love to the book. Instead of making Harry make love to the potion book. But the liquid luck bit is still one of the high points of the entire series. 3 out of 5. And then I watched We're Back, a dinosaur story, and I can't tell if this was a sweet dream or a beautiful nightmare, but holy shit, is this one of the most absolute, just fever dream experiences I've ever seen. I could not imagine watching this as a kid, but as I watched it, I just felt my brain degrade into just mush. And I was just looking at the pretty pictures on screen, but it wasn't even pretty pictures, it was like a creepypasta playing out in real time in my head. And I was just not taking in the dialogue, and I was just like, oh, pretty picture, pretty picture, pretty picture. And, it was just full hypodermic needle, and it was just like, I think this is the closest thing that you could get to showing your kid a Razorhead, to be honest. I think this fucked me up more than a Razorhead did. 2.5 out of 5. Speaking of just really bad experiences for children, I watched Watership Down. And this should not be a kids movie. It's gross and fucked. 3.5 out of 5. And then I watched Brother Bear, and this holds up so well. It's so nice and pleasant, but also really sad and fucked. And it's weird because the bear sounds like the new Joker who was on the Murray Show. In all seriousness, it's really... fucking hell. In all seriousness, it's really touching and nice to watch, and nature is cool, and brotherhood and stuff. It's a must-watch Disney film. Underrated and underappreciated. 3.5 out of 5. Then to finish the month off, I watched Paprika, and this is absolutely crazy. The visuals are unlike anything else I've ever seen, except for obviously Inception, because this movie is Inception, but animated, and it came first. Take that, film bros. But yeah, this is just fucking insane. It's so crazy to see how far Satoshi Kon was able to push animation before his death, because this is certainly one of the most visually interesting films, let alone animations, I've ever seen. 4 out of 5. Yeah, so that's what I watched for June in 2020. My top 5 recommendations would be Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, Yi, Tampopo, The Handmaiden, and Paranoia Agent. Thanks for watching. Leave any recommendations in the comments and like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I shouldn't have recorded this at 1 in the morning.